Good afternoon. The Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment is hereby called to order for its regularly scheduled meeting of February 22nd, 2023. My name is Tim Rainey. I'm chairman of the board. Mr. Brett Ragsdale serves as secretary of the board. Mr. Ragsdale, may get a roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Ms. Baker?
Here.
Ms. Bostic? Here. Mr. Bruce?
Here.
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Claybrook? Here. Vice Chair Savage Towns?
Present.
Chair Rainey?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. The Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment is the oldest appointed governmental body in Memphis and Shelby County. We were established in 1925. The board hears appeals from the administration of the zoning ordinance, requests for variances from the zoning ordinance, and other requests as articulated by local zoning laws adopted pursuant to the enabling legislation. The 8 members of the board are appointed, 4 by the mayor of Memphis and 4 by the mayor of Shelby County, with confirmation by the Memphis City Council or Shelby County Board of Commissioners. We serve without remuneration. At this time, I would like to swear in the staff. You may remain seated. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. All right, thank you. May I get a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting?
So moved.
Second. Moved and second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Mr. Secretary, please provide us a secretary's report, if there is one this month, and then explain the procedure for today's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a secretary's report, so I will just go into the procedures.
Thank you.
The procedure for this meeting will be as follows. I will introduce each case as listed on the agenda. Copies of the agenda can be found at the front right podium. For each case, the planner with the Division of Planning and Development will give a presentation that will contain site plans, photographs, and maps of the subject property. At the conclusion of the staff presentation, the applicant will present his or her case. After the applicant's presentation, the board will hear first from those speakers in support of the application, then from those speakers in opposition to the application, and then finally the applicant will have an opportunity to provide rebuttal. All parties who wish to provide testimony to the board will be sworn in by the chair. If a member of the audience wishes to provide testimony in support of or in opposition to a particular case on today's agenda, he or she will need to fill out a speaker's card for the record. Speaker's cards are available at the front podium. Once filled out, speaker's cards can be submitted to any DPD planner staff member at the left podium. We do not need speaker's cards from the applicant since their names are already part of the record. After all parties have been heard, the board will close the public hearing, make a motion, and then deliberate on the case. Pursuant to the board's rules of procedures, the time allotted for speakers will be as follows. The applicant has 5 minutes to present his or her case. The applicant may reserve unused time for his or her rebuttal. Those speakers in support of the application have 5 minutes. This 5 minutes is the total time allotted for support testimony, regardless of the number of speakers. Those speaking in opposition to the application have 10 minutes. This 10 minutes is the total time allotted for opposition testimony, regardless of the number of speakers. The applicant has 2 minutes for rebuttal in addition to any unused time from his or her presentation time. These times do not include time for questions from and answers to members of the board. The chair may provide additional time provided both sides are given an equal amount of additional time. If the applicant or any speaker would like to be heard after the conclusion of the public hearing, or if a board member wishes to hear additional testimony from any party, a two-thirds vote is required to reopen the public hearing pursuant to the board's rules of procedure. Please note that once the public hearing is reopened, both the applicant and opposition will be allowed to provide additional testimony and or rebuttal. All motions made by this board will be made in the affirmative. The private acts governing the board require the affirmative vote of at least 5 members to approve an application, regardless of the number of board members present. The board may also vote to hold an application for a period not to exceed 90 days with the consent of the applicant or 30 days without the consent of the applicant. All section numbers that we refer to come from the Memphis and Shelby County Unified Development Code, or the UDC, which was adopted by the Memphis City Council and the Shelby County Board of Commissioners in August of 2010 and became effective on January 1st, 2011. I will introduce the entire UDC and make it part of today's record, thus dispensing with the reading of individual sections. The board is vested with the power to act on these cases before us today under the provisions of Chapter 9.22 of the UDC. Mr. Chairman, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order. All applicants have been notified of this hearing, and all notice requirements have been fulfilled as required by the UDC.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. At this point, the board will establish a consent agenda. To establish the consent agenda, the secretary will call out each eligible case. If any member of the audience, staff, or board member objects to a case being placed on the consent agenda, he or she should make their objection known by a show of hands when the secretary reads that case. Once the consent agenda is established, the board will vote on all cases placed on the agenda as a whole and will not hold individual public hearings on those cases. Mr. Secretary, which items on our agenda are eligible to be placed on consent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me hold 1 second. Let me see what this discussion was about. Okay, the consent agenda will be as follows, and I want to note that item number 1 has been withdrawn. So the consent agenda will be item number 4, BOA 22-170, 837 Florida Street as a 1-month hold. Item number 5, BOA 22-180, 3375 and 3385 Winbrook Drive as a hold for 1 month. Item number 6, BOA 23-001 between Bass Road and Rast Road, east of New Bethel Road. Item number 7, BOA 23-002, 2020 Airways Boulevard as a hold for 1 month. Item number 8, BOA 23-004, 2112 Court Avenue. Item number 9, BOA 23-005, 695 3rd Street. Item number 10, BOA 23-006, 1201 Wellington Street as a 1-month hold.
Mr. Ragsdale, did you call that as a hold, number 10?
Yes.
Okay.
Item number 11, BOA 23-007, 964 Kentucky Street as a 1-month hold. Item number 12, BOA 23-008, 612 South Graham Street as a 1-month hold. Item number 13, BOA 23-009, 2496 Carnes Avenue. Item number 14, BOA 23-010, 5350 Poplar Avenue. Item number 15, BOA 23-011, 3337 Overton Crossing Street as a 1-month hold. And number 6 listed as on consent, but we have cards in opposition, so we will pull that one. So number 6 is not, it will be heard.
What did you say about, do we have cards on number 9 as well? Or did I just miss you saying it?
We do not, that's,
So it's part of, 9 is approval, okay. All right, I'm gonna run through these real quick. Can we get a motion to approve the following cases? 4 is a hold, 5 is a hold, 7 is a hold, 8 and 9 as approval with staff conditions, 10 is a hold, 11 is a hold, 12 was a hold, 13 is approval with conditions, 14 approval with conditions, and 15 as a hold.
So moved.
You move.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, Mr. Secretary, will you give us a roll call, please?
yes, sir. Ms. Gerlach?
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Bruce?
Yes.
Ms. Bostic?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Towns?
Yes, I find the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 are being met and will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
And Chair Rainey?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. So if you're here for those cases we just called out, or otherwise, if you're not here for cases 2, 3, and 6, you've been approved or held as requested. Mr. Secretary, will you call our first case we're going to hear today?
Yes, sir. It's item number 2, BOA 22-169, 629 East Street.
Okay, see the applicants here. Is there any opposition here today for this? We have opposition. Thank you. Yeah, we're good. Mr. Thomas, will you give us a rundown of the staff report? I think we talked a little bit about it last week. If you'll just bring us up to speed if there's been any changes.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. So I did add one other variance to this
Okay.
request, subsection 2.9.5B, to allow an impound lot to operate within 500 feet of a single-family residence. As you can see from the zoning atlas, although the area to the south is zoned EMP, those residences are habited, and as such, they would need a variance from this code. The staff report's more or less the same. The variance is for to allow a tow yard with inoperable vehicles to operate in the EMP zoning district. The issue with the lot in question, or I guess why it's before us today, is the property started sort of expanding outside of the boundary, or the use started expanding outside the boundaries of the property. Particularly cars stored by the business within the railroad right-of-way and the sidewalk. And these are site provotos that are provided by the opposition of car crushing equipment and stacked cars on the lot that aren't necessarily viewable from East Street specifically. This is the site plan and survey that was provided by the applicant, showing sort of the bounds of the lot between East Street and Georgia Avenue and Neptune Street, and then it's bordered to the north by the Southern Railroad. So basically, although this property opened legally as a towing service in 2014, the site's principal use has shifted into sort of a junkyard, an impound lot, and the business is storing inoperable vehicles on the sidewalk, within a railroad easement, and within the right-of-way, which is not just against the code, but is also, illegal. In staff's opinion, although the site was opened legally, it's really gone through a shift of principal use from a towing service to a junkyard, and that doesn't qualify as an undue hardship, as that was more of a deliberate act of the owner. As such, we're recommending rejection, and the approval will expire, within a 6-month time period, just to get kind of out in front of it. This is the use chart information that sort of shows a delineation between a towing service, a tow yard impound lot, a tow yard impound lot that's in heavy industrial, and then a junkyard and salvage yard. And I'm sure I'll leave this up because I'm assuming we'll come back to sort of the differences. That sort of concludes my presentation. I'm open for any questions.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Just to refresh my memory, the 2014 use, that was the towing, but that was also with the insurance. I know we mentioned something about insurance companies. This is where the cars would come. Is that this case?
Yeah, they got a certificate of occupancy in 2014 to operate as a towing service, yes.
Okay.
And I think the issue here is the amount of cars that are being brought to the site and the amount of time that they're staying there, and the lack of space within the site boundaries itself, which has led to the storage of vehicles in various states of disrepair outside of the boundaries. That's sort of the reason why they're here today, both cited via code enforcement and then came to here for a zoning entitlement.
Another question. Is there a maximum amount of vehicles that they're allowed to have, even when they were operating as a tow yard at some point?
There is not really within the Unified Development Code a set amount of vehicles that would create a delineation between a tow yard or an impound lot. That's not a solid number.
Okay. Thank you. Another question.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
When it was operating as a tow yard, were the vehicles staying there for a certain amount of time, like a couple of weeks or a month?
That I can't necessarily speak to, but just looking from the Sidwell maps that we have that sort of show the aerial of the property, and I guess I can try to pull up the zoning atlas for an example. When the site opened and for some of the years after the initial opening of the site, the majority of the stuff was being done inside of the boundaries of the lot. And over a period of time, as you see sort of year by year, it gets bigger and bigger until eventually it's sort of grown out of proportion. And I think we as staff would be remiss to say that all towing yards don't store a certain amount of inoperable vehicles on their lot. Really, the issue here is the amount, which I think takes it out of that towing service and more into an impound or junkyard type situation. and the amount outside of the boundaries is really the main issue with this particular request, as opposed to maybe other tow yards that operate throughout the city in an EMP zoning district.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, Mr. Bray? You want to give your name and address for the record? I'll swear you in.
All right, David Bray with the Bray Firm, 2950 Stage Plaza North, Bartlett.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, go ahead and share with us.
Okay, well, let's start with the easy portions. The items in the staff report regarding the storage vehicles in the railroad right-of-way and the public right-of-way. Talked to my client on this. His understanding is that we've got to get everything within the confines of the property. That's not an issue. There's also some information there about the fence along the railroad property and it's old rail cars, and he is in the process of contracting to get a new fence installed, and I will also let him speak to that. So those issues we do not have issue with. Our issues are where it stops being a tow yard, where it starts being an impound lot, and we're probably going to go back to that chart, and we're probably going to spend a little time here. And part of the reason I asked for the hold last month is because he could not be here to sort of explain some of those differences. So I've got him here, so I'll let you swear him in and let him speak to those issues specifically and where we are.
Okay. If you'll give your name and address for the record.
My name's Robert Dybel. I own 633 East Street.
Okay.
C29.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead.
Well, the property has always been a tow yard, 100% from the get-go. 90% of our business is with the city of Memphis. It is a impound. The cars that we bring in are not cars that we can say, we'll tow this one, not tow this one. We have to tow them all because we're contracted with the city of Memphis. The cars that are out on the street that you see, those cars are going to be picked up by the insurance companies from the people that have insurance. It just so happens a lot of people in Memphis don't have insurance, so that's why the car crusher's there. The car crusher's there because we have to dispose of the cars after a certain amount of time. Usually takes 30 to 45 days to file on a car and get the correct paperwork to dispose of the vehicle. Those cars that are out there, them are the cars that came in the day before. We usually tow 50 to 60 cars a day for the city of Memphis. We're in 5 zones. We're one of the largest towing companies for Memphis. And the containers are out there, but mainly because for security purposes, they were stealing stuff out of people's cars on a regular basis when we were on the property, right there by the police department. So that's why we put those Connex boxes there. And it's such a large piece of property, and that's why we hadn't had a fence installed yet. I do have permit pulled, or trying to get a permit pulled to have a fence installed, and that stuff will be removed from the property, all the way around the building, so all the way around the property. Inoperable cars are, a part of our business. That's what we do, and that's what it's been from the get-go,
Can you tell us a little bit about what's your policy for how long you keep cars on the lot? I mean, how many days, and then if nobody claims them or the insurance problems, as you said, what happens to them? Just talk about the process.
So the process of that is, after 3 days, we notify the owner that we have their vehicle. After that, we send first letters out, certified return receipt letters, within 3 days. After 30 days, we run an ad in the paper and file with the state of Tennessee. And they give us the lien holder information, which is the owner of the vehicle or the bank that owns the vehicle. Then after that, we have to run an ad in the paper for 10 days. So we're at 45 days now before we can ever move the car legally or dispose of it, either one. And these are cars that we brought in from the city of Memphis, impound, which everybody knows that, auto thefts went through the roof. They're stealing 1,000 cars a month, already. I mean, they already stole, I think, 2,000 cars this year. And that overflows to us because the impound lot, the city impound lot, if they don't have room, it goes to our lots. So we have plenty of room. It's just the cars that y'all are seeing at that particular time is cars that we put out for insurance companies to pick up, or the cars that come in the night before, so we arrange on the lot where we need to put them. As far as the car filing, after 30 days, we file on it with the state, and the state sends us back. We have to give them time enough to give the correct information back. Then after that, we run an ad in the paper. And then we have to set up an auction date, which is usually 15 days after that. So, we're around 60 days to get even the paperwork to dispose of the vehicle. And that's where we're at. And that's always been from the get-go. That rule's never changed. And that's what we've been doing. It's just we got abundance of cars. And we set them out to arrange it. If you'll see, we got plenty of room. And while the car crusher's there, it's because we have to get some kind of way to get them out of there. If it's flattened out and hauled off for scrap, I mean, it's the same difference. We're not in the salvage yard business. Salvage yard business sells parts. We do not sell parts. We don't sell any kind of parts. All we do is flatten them out and send them to the shredder to get disposed of. That's all we do.
And I'm sure that sometimes you have cars on the lot that are longer than that time period that you talked about.
Occasionally, yes.
Yeah, I mean, what portion? How often does that happen?
Not very often, because I want them out of there as fast as possible. I have bills to pay. I have to pay my bills, So I want them out of there. I wish everybody had insurance so they can their insurance can come pick it up. But that's unfortunate. We don't have that. So I want my money as fast as possible. So if I had a choice, I wouldn't keep none of the cars.
How fast does a car with insurance move off the lot?
A car with insurance usually moves off the lot within a week, probably 5 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Yeah.
You say you have plenty of room on the site. Why then even store the cars outside for the insurance company to pick up? Can you move some of the other cars back so that there's room within your site to pick up the cars?
Since this has come up, we cleared out that front part right there on the right-hand side, and we store all our cars on the inside of the fence now. So they pick up their cars inside the fence now. We don't store anything outside. Code enforcement has been by there several times. Mr. Simmons has been by there, and he says it's drastically improved over, since we've been doing this for several months. I mean, I'll let you tell that, but we start storing cars inside the fence now. Cars to be picked up for that day. So that in the morning, the insurance companies send us a list of cars they're going to pick up for the day. So we moved all that out right there in front of the building, and that's where we pick up cars. Everybody picks up cars from there. Now, some people can't afford a wrecker to come pick up their vehicle. So what they do is they drive the car outside the fence and park it there. And we tell them you cannot park cars out there in Opera. You're going to get it towed. And I've told code enforcement, I told them, I said, tow the cars. That's not us. That's the people that are doing that. Now, some of that on the right-hand side, that is us. That's first part of the day. We get out and get the cars organized, but we don't even do that anymore. So
do you have any car parts on your lot?
Parts? The parts that fell off cars.
Okay.
In the accident, we're supposed to pick up all the debris out of the road. Not for sale. We don't sell parts at all.
Okay.
Yeah. But, by the city, we're supposed to pick up all the debris. That means bumpers, fenders. If the motor gets knocked out of it, we got to pick the motor up and put it in there. We do not sell any parts of any kind. I got a big sign on the front of my gate, no parts for sale, because there is a salvage yard right down the street, and we direct them all down there.
So for those parts that you do have that you say fall off of the vehicles, what do you do with them?
We usually throw them inside the car.
You do what?
We put them inside the
car.
But sometimes when they load them up and they pick them up, stuff falls off of them.
Okay, so you don't have any parts that are left on the yard after the car is moved. If there are parts, they go with the car.
Occasionally they do. They're not supposed to, but they do leave bumpers and stuff like that. Because sometimes they don't have wheels on them. They drag them up there and the bumper comes off. Mm-hmm. Or, a big piece of plastic,
And what do you do with those?
I usually clean them up and put them in a pile and then dispose of them in a roll-off container.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's one there today.
Quick question. So is the tow yard, or is it open 24 hours a day for deliveries of cars? I imagine, are you towing 24 hours a day?
Yes. We tow 24 hours a day for the city of Memphis, yes.
And then, but are cars did you mention cars being left out front until they can get a spot inside?
See, it's not that's not what happens. What happens is if somebody comes, pays their car out, and they don't have insurance.
Sure.
They have every right to crank their car up and drive it to wherever they want to, if it's operable. And they drive it outside the fence and park it there, and
Sure.
they call the roadside assistance to come pick up their vehicle. That's on them. That's not mine. And I've told code enforcement that 100 times. Y'all need to tow the vehicles. They're not mine. And I've warned the people not to park their cars out there, and they still do it. Even the lady across the street that owns another building adjacent to me, they park over in her lot nonstop, and I keep telling them, do not park over there. And, it just happens regardless.
But if like a car got towed in the middle of the night from an accident or whatever, they could drop it off inside. You're just not open to the public during the day. Yeah,
Our tow truck drivers drop cars 24 hours a day.
Yeah, and they can get inside. They're not dropping them on the sidewalk,
Yes.
waiting until the gate opens.
They all have gates. There's multiple gates to go in.
Gotcha. Okay. Never mind. Any other questions?
I got one
Yeah.
quick question. So
Yes, sir.
in 2014, this was legally open as a towing company.
Yes, sir. With the city, I've been a contractor of the city of Memphis and Shelby County and THP since 2007. Opened this location up in 2014.
So from
And
an operations standpoint, what has been done, I guess, differently from when it was originally operating? I mean, when it was originally seen and approved as a towing company, how has operations changed in 2023 that would make them indicate that this could possibly be leading towards a junkyard as opposed to a towing company?
Well, I mean, it's always been a towing lot from the get-go. I've been on the city rotation since 2014 in that location. The only thing it's really, crime and, people not having insurance and all that stuff has just grown for that, just because business has picked up. I mean, we used to tow 30 cars a month. Now we're towing 60 cars in a weekend's time.
So it's a higher capacity of vehicles coming in quicker. And you mentioned something about a potential, I guess was it a privacy fence you were talking about? Or would it just be would it just be a normal metal?
We're going to put up a privacy fence, just like it's on the front. We're going to put it on the side. All the way around the right side of your picture there, that's at an angle adjacent to the railroad tracks there. And then we're going to do it on the back too, but it's so expensive, fencing and materials that went through the roof, and that's why it's not already done. It's so expensive. And originally I was going to take those Connex boxes and cut them up and use those as a wall pretty much. Cut the sides off of them and the roof and drive poles in the ground and use that as a fence, but I was told that we couldn't use that. So I have to go a different route. We're going to move the containers off the property and start all over them and put a real fence up. I mean, they cut through them so fast, That's why we had those containers there to begin with. I was trying to get something to slow them down. If they want in, they're going to get in. But the containers were a little bit harder to cut through than a chain link fence with some site proofing on it. We're constantly, I have a fence guy on speed dial that fix my fence every other day. So, I mean, we're going to try to pull a permit to put metal like 10 all the way down, all the way around the building, except in the front. We're going to go on all three corners with a metal fence, some kind of type of metal fence to slow them down.
Any other questions? All right, are y'all good for now? Or do you,
Good for now.
Okay,
Yes.
so we got some time remaining. We're going to move to the opposition. Got several people here, so y'all can pick who would like to talk first, or I can call names. Okay. If you'll give your name and address for the record.
My name is Jamie Gibber, 40 South Main.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Gibber.
Good afternoon. As I mentioned, my name is Miss Gibber. I represent Dillard Companies and Chris Bird, and along with our co-signatories to our opposition letter, and that would be the Soulsville Foundation, South Main Concourse, LLC, ACC Rebuilders Incorporated, Eagle Distributing, Orgel Family Ventures, Elmwood Cemetery, Memphis Equipment Company, Tri-State Truck Center, along with our fellow opposers, Memphis Medical District Collaborative, Nathan Knight, and the Development Services Group. And we're here to oppose the variance application today, and I'm going to walk through several bases why this application should be denied today. At the outset, I'd like to just say that it doesn't matter how laymen may define what's happening on this property. It matters what the UDC characterizes the property as. And this is a junkyard, according to the UDC, not a tow yard or an impound lot. And it doesn't matter if the inoperable vehicles were operating within or being held within the bounds of the property. Under the UDC, they cannot, as a matter of law, operate a junkyard in an EMP district. The board's analysis should begin and end with this fact. And aside from this, the junkyard has been a habitual problem and is an ongoing nuisance and eyesore to the community. Several community members are present today and will speak to what it's like to live next to this nuisance and obnoxious property, first being Kim Bearden and Barry Sparrow. Now, I know last month there was some questions related to, well, what's the delineation between a tow yard and a junkyard and an impound lot? And so, and I believe there was a question posed, I believe it was by Mr. Rainey, of, well, where can a tow service function in an EMP district, and can it? And there are instances where towing services and impound lots would be able to function and be permitted in an EMP district. And those would be under two circumstances. When there's a towing service without an impound lot, or where impound lots are associated with wrecker services that do not store inoperable vehicles. And as Mr. Dybel said, his whole business is inoperable vehicles. That's what it is, whether it's in the property, outside of the property. His whole business is inoperable vehicles, which is not allowed under the UDC. Additionally, those uses are only permitted when they're not within 500 feet of single-family residential uses, and when, again, they do not store inoperable vehicles. A junkyard is defined by a property where there are two or more motor vehicles not in running condition, or parts thereof are stored in the open and are not being restored to operation. Now, there's no distinguishment of, well, are you selling those parts? Or are you not selling those parts? And quite frankly, according to the UDC, there doesn't even have to be parts of vehicles. It just has to be inoperable vehicles to be considered a junkyard or a tow yard. And as evidenced by the photos provided in the staff report, as well as in our opposition letter, the property regularly stores multiple inoperable vehicles, far in abundance of two. Not just on the property, but also on the adjacent roadway, which is a public right-of-way, and even on the abutting railroad. And not only is this obviously out of harmony with the surrounding area, but it's also inherently dangerous to the public. If my client's testimony and the pictures contained within the staff report aren't enough to indicate that the applicant operates a junkyard and not an impound lot, you can rely on the fire department's release that was attached to our opposition letter and is on the screen. In October of 2021, the Memphis Fire Department responded to a fire at the location. It was a heavy fire requiring several pieces of emergency equipment and personnel, and the cause of the fire was an electric car ignited with fuel while being crushed in a vehicle crusher machine. So it's going to be really difficult to say that they're not storing inoperable vehicles here. I know Seth put up the crushing machine picture earlier. I have photos here with those pictures. If you would like me to pass those up, I'm happy to. They're in color and a little bit easier to see. But this is a junkyard, not a tow yard. It doesn't matter who Mr. Dybel's contracted with, whether that's the city of Memphis or anyone. It doesn't matter if there's insurance issues. He owns other properties that he could conduct this business on. We are in no way saying that Mr. Dybel can't conduct his business or can't conduct his business the way he wants to conduct his business. He just can't do it in an EMP zone. Now, even if this was a tow yard, as Mr. Dybel would like to characterize it as, inoperable vehicles aren't allowed in a tow zone, in an EMP zone. That's in UDC 2.6.3P, and it provides guidance on the storage of vehicles in an EMP district. Those provisions state that operable vehicles may be parked on site during business hours. All vehicle parking shall be accomplished on the site, and in no case shall a parked vehicle encroach into the right-of-way. And again, that's talking about operable vehicles. It says there shall be no dismantling of vehicles for salvage, and the storage of inoperable vehicles is not permitted in the EMP district. Now, like I said, we believe, and I think the UDC dictates, that this is a junkyard, not a tow yard. And according to the UDC, a junkyard can't operate in an EMP district. It's only reserved for an IH district. And even if this property were zoned located in an IH zone, where a junkyard can operate, a variance application would not be the correct avenue and is inappropriate here. Even in an IH zone, junkyards are only permitted by obtaining a special use permit and have to be 1,500 feet from any residential district. The variance rules within the UDC explicitly prohibit a use variance from being requested or approved for a use that requires the issuance of a special use permit, which would be the case here if this were even allowed. Now, to the extent the applicant seeks to legitimize any existing use, the variance application can't do that either. First of all, the UDC doesn't allow the variance process to legitimize established uses, but only for uses established prior to January 1st, 2011. Mr. Dybel testified and provided in his application that he opened his business in 2014. Additionally, today, and I think his application suggests that he's never been compliant. He opened what he characterizes as a tow yard, but as he stated, his business is and has always been inoperable vehicles. And under the UDC, that's not what a tow yard is. That is a junkyard. Mr. Dybel seems to suggest that past and present noncompliance somehow justifies and warrants future noncompliance, but that's just not the case. Now, even if everything I've said isn't true, even if a variance application were the correct avenue here, the application doesn't provide the required information for approval. First of all, there's no unusual characteristics set forth. The unusual characteristic would be his own noncompliance, as Mr. Thomas suggested. The requested variance goes against the intent and purpose of the code. It's an obnoxious property, it's injurious, it's unsafe. Additionally, the requested variance would be injurious to the neighborhood and the general welfare. This is an EMP zone. According to the UDC, an EMP district is intended to accommodate office, light manufacturing, research and development, warehousing, wholesale, processing, and commercial uses in order to promote economic viability, encourage employment growth, and limit the encroachment of non-industrial development within established industrial areas. Development should be operated in a relatively clean and quiet manner and should not be obnoxious to nearby residential or commercial uses. Now, the property is the complete opposite of clean or quiet, obviously on the areas surrounding the property, but also on the area within the property, as evidenced by the crusher that is on the property. It's loud, it's noisy, it's messy, there's lots of inoperable cars stacked on top of each other. Additionally, to grant a use variance, the board would have to find that none of the uses permitted on the property are practical. That's not been argued here, and that's not the case here. Again, we implore the board to see this property for what it is, a junkyard. A variance, if it can even be called that, to operate a junkyard in an EMP zone not only is totally against the purpose and intent of the UDC, but it would also be injurious to the neighborhood and general welfare. Accordingly, we respectfully request that the board deny this application to uphold the UDC and the integrity of the neighborhood and the city itself.
Thank you, Ms. Gibber. Are there any questions for Ms. Gibber? Is that our 10 minutes? Well, you about hit that on the nose. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Bray and Mr. Robert, do y'all want to rebut that? How much time do we have left? We got 9 minutes left if you want to rebut. No, we're done with the opposition is over. We get the full 10 minutes went, but we see you down there. So that was pretty thorough. So we're back to the applicant.
Thank you.
find myself here. I took a couple of notes as she was talking. Disagree with her finding that it was never operating per the code. Page 1 of the staff report indicates that staff believes that this was opened properly in 2014. What we're dealing with here is the argument of when a vehicle becomes inoperable. 9:30 tonight, Mr. Dibble gets a phone call to go tow a car by the Memphis Police Department. He doesn't know if it's inoperable when that call comes in. It's part of his contract with the city of Memphis to go pick up that car and bring it back in. Even when he brings it back on the lot, and I'm sure he's got a pretty good idea of whether or not it's inoperable, he doesn't declare it inoperable until the insurance company declares that it's an inoperable vehicle, at which point they will either dispose of the car. Hopefully it's got private insurance and it's gone in 3 to 5 days. And if not, then he's got to go through the state regulations to move that process through. As I opened my presentation, all of the issues with stowing of vehicles inside the right-of-way of the public right-of-way or the railroad right-of-way. We've discussed that. Mr. Dibble's in agreement to get those things out of that, get it behind a fence. He's going to get a fence put up. We can address all of those issues, and if you look at the staff recommendations, it suggests that we have about a 6-month period for that to be done and revisit this issue if those issues are being addressed and properly done inside the site. And we are completely in agreement with the staff recommendation on that. Now it's an issue of what becomes an inoperable vehicle if this meets the definition of a junkyard or if it's a tow lot. Operating under his agreement with the city of Memphis to go pick up a vehicle tonight. I'm sure he would love to tow in only 2022 Lexuses that have a flat tire and have them roll out the next day, but that's not the nature of the business. Thank you, and we'll be happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Okay. Are there any questions?
Yeah,
Bruce?
I think I heard it said that you have a vehicle crusher that you crush vehicles on the property. Is that true, or can you talk about that?
We try to crush cars. If we have them left over a period of time, we dispose of them, yes.
That's when nobody else will claim them.
Yes.
It's not a vehicle that can be sold at auction, and that's just a matter of getting it out off the site. It's crushing it and then
Exactly.
Packaging up several of them and sending them off the site.
So you crush them and then you do what with?
We load them up on the flatbeds and send them to
haul
the scrap yard, actually a junkyard.
Okay.
And the picture that they showed, the crusher was on fire. That was a company I hired out of town, out of Alabama, to come crush cars for me. That's before I owned a crusher myself.
I think one kind of fine line or thin line is what's considered inoperable and what's considered, a non-salvageable vehicle. I think in some of those pictures I saw, and I might be wrong, but I saw what vehicles look to be stacked on top of each other. Well, I would clearly think those would be considered fully inoperable vehicles. Now, that's not to say that a vehicle that needs engine repair. I mean, I'm reading something now that indicates that if a vehicle is temporarily rendered incapable of being driven because it needs to be ordinary service or repair, that's not considered inoperable. But I think a vehicle that's, stacked on top of each other, clearly looks like it's wrecked, in most cases will be seen as inoperable. So I think that's the fine line. A tow yard and a junkyard have a lot of similarities, but how that vehicle sits in an inoperable state and how long it sits really is the key, I think. And that's the hard part about it, trying to determine how some of those vehicles appear to be very much inoperable. And I'm not trying to tell you how to change your business, but I mean, you have the right, I guess, to determine if you pick up a vehicle that's deemed fits that category of being inoperable. And you can definitely do that to make sure that you don't have this problem, but that might not be financially an option. So that's just my kind of observation thinking about that.
Well, since then, we've quit stacking cars, and the cars that are usually stacked are the cars that are being ready to be processed. Since then, we've we stopped stacking vehicles. There's still some on this today that are in the back that are still stacked up, but we're in the middle of processing them. We've pretty much, maybe a quarter of them, maybe 50 cars are stacked right now. But we're in the process of crushing them right now to this day, because we were told by code enforcement that they don't need to be stacked on top of each other no more, so we hadn't done it since. So.
And when he says process, by that, those are the ones that there is no insurance company coming to get, was not sold at auction. So now they're just, they're crushing and sending off to the scrapyard.
I have a question. Did you mention that you had several different locations?
Yes, ma'am. I own 6 or 7 pieces of property, commercial property.
And is it possible to take inoperable vehicles to one of your other locations rather than this particular location?
They're all exactly like this property. We have different zones with the city of Memphis. There's 9 zones, and we have to carry those cars to that property as we get called. So we get a call out of zone 9, we carry that car to the zone 9 lot. So, no, I don't really have that option to carry them to another facility.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for staff. Should I ask it now, or should I wait till we're in
That is up to
discussion?
you.
Okay, well, then
If
I'll
you ask
go.
it now, then you could get comments from the applicant, but if you do not
Okay.
want comments, you could wait.
No, I'm fine either way. In the UDC, Mr. Davis, I don't really find a separation between these uses: scrap metal, tow yard, I forget what the other one was that you mentioned. And so I was just wondering, your chart that you put up there, is that in the UDC? I could be just missing it.
Yeah, well, so the chart itself's not in the UDC. The chart was made by the opposition, but all of the things that are referenced in the chart are included within the UDC. So at least from, my understanding is the tow yard impound lot for the light industrial districts, impound lots associated with wrecker services would be sort of what was spoken to in terms of car has a flat tire, car's transmission blows up. Something along those lines, so where it's towed to a place, it sits at that place until the insurance company, Geico, roadside assistant, AAA, whatever the case may be, comes and picks it up within an allotted amount of time. As the opposition has stated in staff's, our opinion, the aspect of the vehicle crusher, which is a heavy industrial use, something that would only be allowed in heavy industrial, the opposition has wanted me to ask if that crusher is licensed through the state of Tennessee. Of course, we in the UDC do not have crusher licensing, or whether that be through TDEC, TDOT, whatever the case. Really, the impound lot wrecker services, including auto storage, impounded lots, and those towing services permitted. Basically, the use that this man is having right now on his lot is something that is allowed in the IH zoning district and isn't allowed in the EMP district. Hence, the reason he's filing for this variance. I don't know if that answered your question, but I'm certainly open.
It kind of did, but it raised another question, because I see in your report 500 feet, but I see in the UDC 1,500 feet. I don't see 500 anywhere. Didn't you have 500 to a residential?
I'm pretty sure. I'm fairly certain that the section referenced.
I could not find the towing and what was the other one you had? Impound, yes. All I was able to find was salvage yard, and they were kind of all lumped together, and they were IH with a special use permit and 1,500-foot distance. That's the only thing that I've been able to find in the UDC, and I'm trying to find this now, 2.9.4. I just don't see it.
I would agree that it's difficult to find some of the stuff. talking to Mr. Dabo, he would be willing to take the crusher off.
It's mobile.
And not have that on this site, so that when we get to the end of the run, there's no insurance, nobody's bought it at auction, nobody's picked it up after notification in the paper for 10 days, that they would just put it on a flatbed and haul it off that way rather than crushing it before they do, which would take that aspect of the noise operation out and take away the appearance that he is a junkyard as opposed to a towing lot.
You're talking about the crusher, right?
Taking away
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a mobile unit. You can hook it up to a truck and haul it out of there. They're made to come in for a short period of time and haul away later after you get done with it. A lot of times we don't use it, but maybe once or twice a month, for a short period of time. We don't use it constantly all day, every day. We just use it periodically. And not only that, I'm still sticking with the same thing that this was a tow yard that they allowed me, a UNO. They allowed everything in 2014 for me to open up a towing business in this location. Simple. It's very simple. I've told them exactly what I was doing, why they approved it. I have no idea.
Yes, ma'am.
The, quick question, the vehicles that are towed there, are the towing vehicles yours, or do you hire out or have contracted out for that?
I have several employees, probably 20 employees that drive tow trucks.
So you do have records that actually go out and pull those vehicles in?
Yes, for the city of Memphis, that's all we pretty much do. Is contract for the city.
That's good. You went too much.
Old school.
And none of them go to, not all of them come to our lot. It's about 50-50. Some of them go to the city impound lot. But right now we have an issue at the city impound lot. So some of them come to our lot, some of them go to there. It depends on what the crime was. If it was involved in a crime or something like that, it goes to the city lot. If it's not, it goes to our private.
So what would happen to these vehicles if you all weren't allowed to tow your portion of them to your lot? Their overflow of vehicles, where would they then go if the city's lot is completely full and you all weren't existing at this location?
If
What would
we
those?
wouldn't exist, they'd probably put me out of business,
But what would happen to the vehicle?
What would
What
happen to
happens to
those?
vehicles? I don't know. I guess someone else would tow them. Another tow company. There's several on the same street that we're griping about now. There's another towing lot, Flag City Towing's at the middle of the street, at the very end of the street. There's another salvage yard, actually, is East Street Auto Parts. They got cars stacked above the fence all day long. That's why I assumed that it was okay to stack vehicles.
Are those farther? Do those fall outside of the 500 feet requirement? What's different about those tow yards? And
I don't know. That's been my complaint the whole time. They're allowed to do it, but I'm not.
They're all industrial.
The salvage yard, I'm sure, had to pull a permit to do what they're doing down there. But they also have a property across the street that they're stacking cars, 5, 6 high. I don't want to get blamed for something that they're doing, but it's not the same address, but they're doing the same thing down the street. That's why I started stacking them. But since then, we do not stack cars anymore. The other towing company, I don't know why. I don't know if they've been cited or not. But.
hey, Seth, do you know if these other companies he's mentioning were within a certain proximity that you can?
Let me, I don't know how to get back to where I was.
And
Jeffrey,
Mr. Thomas, I can answer that. We can definitely look into that. I don't know that, we can see if Seth looked into those, but if not, we can certainly look into any other properties that might.
There's one here.
Yeah, and I'm just asking just to see a precedent for, the similar things going on. I think the UDC was pretty obvious on inoperable vehicles being considered a tow yard. Being considered a junkyard. But I'm just trying to still delineate that line of what's inoperable, and if other people are doing it, are we considering those inoperable as well? Not to compare, just to see if those happen to be outside of the 500 feet radius or 500 feet proximity that makes those actually have a right of use of them.
So I assume he's referencing these. So these are also, these properties are, this business is also within the EMP zoning district and probably resides within 500 feet. So the thing is, right, when we get a case, I'm assigned the case I have. When you get cited in code enforcement and code enforcement tells you to get a zoning, entitlement, that's what I write my case on. So like I sort of touched on this at the beginning of my presentation is, there are a lot of tow yards that get, certificates of occupancy to operate as tow yards, and over a 5, 10, 15-year period, they become something that does not meet the definition of a tow yard or certified wrecker service in the city of Memphis. But at this, it really isn't, this is nor the time nor the place, I guess, to really like point fingers, because I can't give you good information because it wasn't assigned to me in my staff report.
Gotcha.
So he's trying to say that I need to go down there and call code enforcement of those guys.
You got the right. I mean, you definitely got to. I mean, if you have and I get what he's saying. He's assigned this case, so that's the one he has to really do due diligence on. But so.
Any other questions?
I want to ask one more question of the staff, and I'm still confused about these three uses and where they're distinguished from one another in the UDC. But my question right now is, what I'd like to have, and you can be thinking about it when we're in discussion and everything, but what is a short list of everything this gentleman would have to do to get out of being a salvage yard and get into a category that would be permitted at this location?
Well, I guess first and foremost, it would be getting stuff out of getting things inside of the boundaries of his property would be, number one on the list. Number two on the list would be get totally inoperable cars that are stacked on top of each other waiting for, pickup off of the property. I mean, that's, I think, really the crux of the issue. And I understand how, the business owner is sort of handcuffed in terms of, since he doesn't own the car and he can only own the car after a certain amount of time as set by, Tennessee Code annotated. It's tough, I guess. It would take a lot from what the current, where the site is now currently, even with vehicles moved out of the right of way and off of the train yard, there are a whole bunch of inoperable vehicles that have been stored there over a certain period of time that would need to be moved, and it would have to be a rather expedited process between the cars being dropped off and the cars being picked up and taken to a certified impound lot that's existing within an IH zoning district that has the entitlements necessary to do so, or towed to a mechanic shop in order to get repaired and go back to the person who owns the vehicle originally.
Mr. Ragsdale?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to mention, so Ms. Becker, you did ask about the 500 feet. I just wanted to try to clarify that. So the reference 2.5.9B, which is the light industrial, and that's where some of the uses are listed. That's where the 500 feet is. So, and that's where, so he is still within 500 feet of a residential use. And so even if he were to clear everything, he would still need that variance. So that, just wanted to point that out. But that's where the 500 feet is referenced in 2.5.9.
Okay, so can I ask one more question? Sure. And I just want to make sure that this is in environmental court, isn't it?
Yes.
If we reject this use today, would he still be able to shine everything up and do all that's on your short list of what he has to do and be able to continue operating? Only he'd be operating a more constrained.
Not without getting the variance to be within 500 feet.
Because of the 500 feet.
Occupied single-family residence.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because the only towing that can be done is like you could store wreckers in a spot and be a towing business, but you cannot ever bring a car back to this site. That's under correct. That first category on that chart, correct?
I mean, yeah, realistically, this type of use for the towing yard in the EMP zoning district is really for like, at least my understanding of the code would be very minor issues that are very fixable. They can go to a Firestone and get a new tire or what have you. And then also for people who operate their towing service on a lot and they are storing cars on a different lot that is within an IH zoning district that would allow the actual storage of the inoperable vehicles. Because I know from my experience here that there are a couple of companies in Memphis that they operate their trucks out of one business, and then they're storing or putting the cars or the things that they tow on another lot. So that, I think is sort of where that code is coming into play.
Could you put the chart back up, just so you had just, I don't have a question, I just wanted it up there for when I discuss, if that's. Any other questions?
Not of the applicant, but I do have a question. If Code is here, that could give us an update on their findings. Is Code here? Oh, hello there.
There's the man.
Good afternoon, Chris Simmons with Shelby County Code Enforcement, Division of Planning and Development. The case is currently in environmental court. It'll be in court Monday, February the 27th. Normally, Judge Dandridge, wait to see what the board decisions are before he make a ruling on the case. So, I mean, it's, even this environmental court is you all decision.
My ultimate question, and I know they've stated that they reported to you on the cleanup. Have you been out to inspect since the citation, and what were your findings on that?
Yes, ma'am. The environmental cases have been at least one, monthly. So every month we go by and take a picture of the property. And from the initial, this has been an ongoing complaint probably for the last 5-6 years. And so now we have seen improvement in those years. But just as recently as, a couple of weeks ago, you have vehicles on the sidewalk. You still have vehicles on that right-of-way where the old train tracks were. So it's been a continuous, issue. And the owner have told us, just like he said, hey, get those vehicles towed. Those vehicles don't belong to him. But, just kind of find it ironic that this is, it's a business that has, wrecked inoperable vehicles, and you have wrecked inoperable vehicles on the sidewalk right in front of your gate. So that's, but it has been like cleaner since we've, had it in court. And, but like I say, the initial complaint to this property came back over 6 years ago. And when code enforcement issued that certificate of occupancy back in 2014, that was to be a toll lot. You issued a certificate based upon what the owner said the use is going to be. But then a lot of times people change that use. Once they get the certificate, they change that use. And I'm not saying that's what Mr. Valber did, but, that's what, code have to issue. You want it to be a toll lot, and they issued a certificate of occupancy for a toll lot.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Simmons.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have.
I'm sorry. Go right
Go
ahead.
ahead, April.
Thank you. I have one question. Have you all cited any other tow companies on that same?
On the same street? No, we haven't. We haven't. I'm familiar with the other company that he was talking about. It was a 1959 zoning case on it. I don't know what the decisions were, what the rulings were on that case, but merely, I can say that those businesses have sheet metal fencing, and it don't protrude outside of their property boundaries. Whereas this company, like I say, you have vehicles parked, or stored, or dropped off on the sidewalk. But we will look at those other properties. We do have other properties similar to this in court now, but not on East Street. But we will look at it and see what the zoning, what was ruled on in 1959, if it was approved or not approved, and we will address it.
Thank you.
So to be clear, a rejection of this will just be rejecting the variance of whatever this is starting to become. But in its right of use, it can still be a towing,
It could still be a tow lot, yes, sir.
which is going to add some level of ambiguity of what that is. But so by rejecting this, it's still a tow yard, and that's up to him or up to us to determine what the extent of that tow yard represents. Whether that means being fenced in, cars not being outside of the right of way. Because I guess my fear is, even if we reject this, it still is a tow yard, which means there's still going to be, without kind of, stipulations, there's still going to be instances where there are going to be cars on this lot. So how do we police that even on a rejection? I guess that's not necessarily for you, but that's kind of a question of,
Right.
even if we reject this, what are we actually rejecting? Because it's still a tow yard.
Well, and I think that's where it comes down to the 500 feet and the impound. Like, he could have his tow trucks there, have a towing service there, but he cannot, with the 500-foot distance from the residential, he cannot operate legally. He could park tow trucks there, but
Not impound.
he can't impound
Bring
any
cars.
vehicles or keep them there
Okay.
without this variance.
We have tow truck drivers. They carry the trucks at home. That's silly to think that we can just park trucks there.
Well,
We can't afford to do that.
I'm just saying you're allowed to do that by zoning.
Yeah, but
Yeah, that's my only.
when we filed for the UNO, it was they have on there, what is your intents for this property? Towing and storage is on my UNO. I mean, it's been from day one. It has on there, what's your use, your purpose of the use? It's towing and
That's kind of
storage.
That's kind of why I was asking that question, because, I don't know what the UNO actually details as far as a towing yard. So,
They come out and inspect.
Yeah.
They get everyone from electrical, plumbing, the site planner comes out. You have to have a site plan. Everything has to be, tip top. In 2014, when I did this, it was all done correctly for towing and storage. And now everything's changed. I don't get it.
if you took off the inoperable part of your business, could you do that? I mean, could you do it where the only vehicles that you are storing there are considered, minor operable?
Can I take a stab at that, and also to answer Ms. Baker's question of what would be required to sort of get this? Made notes as Seth was talking that number one would be to get everything inside the property line. And not anywhere off the property in public right of way or railroad right of way. Number two would be to get the inoperable vehicles off the property. And according to Ms. Dybel, he's got about 50 of those left, which he can get done in the next couple of weeks and get those off. Now, what becomes the issue is the ones that are in between day 0, they get towed today, and day 60, when he can get rid of them after he's towed them for the city of Memphis. And those are the cars that are going to be the issue. And then the other two things would be to get fencing up and to remove what we volunteered was to remove the crusher.
Connex boxes in the crusher.
Yeah.
Any other questions before we move to discussion? All right, I have one quick question for staff. Before we do that, and we could have gone later, but right now, if we just approved as conditioned by you, it's really just
It's a sunset.
like a 4-month sunset, or
4-month sunset.
whatever it is. Okay.
Yep.
That's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, do we have a motion to approve BOA 22-169 as conditioned by staff? It's being moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I just want to make sure one thing. What he could do on that site right now is a wrecker towing service, but no storage.
That would be allowed under code. It
Okay.
would just be a business that
Okay.
they could not bring cars back.
Anything other than that is not allowed on that site.
Right.
Is that right? Okay.
The next most intensive use would be the tow yard with the impound lot, which only allows operable vehicles, but that has the 500 feet you see in number 2 there. But no inoperable vehicle. And my definition of inoperable that I got from the internet is basically it can be repaired in 7 days. Is kind of.
That's pretty fair, yeah.
Yeah, if it comes in with an engine that's in the back seat, probably not. That's just, but I understand he gets the call, that's what he's got to take. I just didn't know if this property can be used for that. I feel for, I believe him in what he said. I have no reason to doubt that he didn't tell when he got his certificate of use or whatever, that what he was going to do. I just think they approved something incorrectly. And that's, what are we going to do about it? I don't know if the UDC gives me a lot of room on that because it can be used for other places. It's within other things. It's within 500 feet. It looked like about 200 feet from the closest house I could see when I looked it up. So I don't know. I don't know if I can approve it, but I understand the plight. Any other comments?
I think I'm with you, Mr. Chairman. It's a rock and a hard place, but the UDC is very clear on what we can have here and what we can't. And I was trying to ask the question, were there records? Did he have records? And maybe just kind of look at storing those there and then, taking those vehicles to the other lots that permitted it, trying to give it back its original approval at that time. So, that's just kind of my thing, as is, and as standing, probably not so much if you use it for the towing lot that is permitted, and then maybe move it or set some boundaries where it's not 500 feet from a resident, because he has a large size property. So I think if he moved some things around, but just the way it's standing, I can't. I don't see how the UDC allows us to approve that.
I would be willing to approve it with the sunset. I would be willing even to extend the sunset a little bit. I think you've had in here, was it July?
Yeah, so that was basically 6 months from the initial application date. So
Right.
obviously it's been held a couple times, so now it's a
Yeah.
much shorter time.
I would go through more like, I would go to more like September.
Okay.
It's just tough to get, to find a property and stuff. That's a really small time frame.
Okay.
So I would maybe say, if y'all would agree to it, that the sunset would be September 24th of 2023. So that's actually 7 months.
I can be agreeable with that.
I would agree
set
too.
it.
It's going to be tough to find a
Yeah.
property.
Any other comments before we vote?
So
Yes.
we're talking about approving it with both of these conditions that staff listed here, except we're changing the date, the sunset date to September 24th.
Yes, so we need to, so is that okay with our second?
He's revoking
Let me ask that of staff. We're not approving those things and those are not allowed.
Yeah, that's correct.
So
I'm saying-
I didn't think I was thinking we didn't have to say anything about those things because, they're not allowed under, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I just didn't know if you wanted to get it.
Is
Yeah,
that,
no,
I
that's-
guess,
I mean-
is that part of the sunset as well, or is that immediate that needs
I
to
think
be?
that-
And Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that what we're talking about is the crusher and some of those things. That's what the question was from Mr. Thomas is, do you want to include any of that? And what I'm hearing, I think, is we're sunsetting the use variance completely, entirely September 24th. So all of those things can do whatever they do until September 24th, but that's the last of it. So we're not going to get into individual pieces of it.
I was okay with that, but if people want to stop that sooner, that's fine with me too.
Keep it all combined as one.
You
sunset.
just need to shut this thing down as it's working in that amount of time, and hopefully we can find a place to put those items in the meantime. Now, do my second and my
Okay, but just say one
motion.
more
Yeah, go ahead.
time.
Uh-huh.
But he can still pick up vehicles, but he just can't store them there.
He would always be able to do that.
Correct.
There's no variance needed to be able to.
Okay, just
to
making
have
sure
a
about
business
that.
that does that.
So it doesn't really put him totally out of business, I guess is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
it just, to him, it
Changes
doesn't,
his
this
business, yeah.
property doesn't do a lot for him if his
Find somewhere else to
employees
store his
take him home.
cars.
He could
Yeah.
have an office.
Yeah,
You know,
okay.
but yeah, he could do that. All right, if we're good, then Mr. Ragsdale, if you'll give us a roll call, please.
Yes. Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Bostic?
Yes.
Mr. Bruce?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook?
Yes.
Ms. Skerlock?
We're approving the rejection or
We're approving it with the sunset.
the condition? Okay, yes.
Ms. Vice Chair Savage Towns?
Yes.
And Chair Rainey?
Yes. All right, you've been approved with the sunset. So best of luck to you. I understand your plight. I think our hands are tied to do much more than that. All right, Mr. Ragsdale, will you call the next case for us?
Yes, sir. Number 3, BOA 22-171, 62 Anderson Street.
Zone, I said the biggest thing to me.
Mr., I see the applicant's present. Is there any opposition for today's case? Okay, Mr. Thomas, do you want to bring us, we heard this last week, or last month, sorry. Do you want to bring us up to speed on any possible changes since then?
Seth Thomas, Memphis, Shelby County, Office of Planning and Development. So this is the case on 62 Angela Street. So it's a variance from a multitude of paragraphs, subsections, and items relating to an accessory building in the front yard. And I believe that the case was held to see if the applicant could maybe come to an agreement with the company that had placed this sort of accessory structure in their front yard to see if they could maybe reduce the size or the height or something like that. So that's sort of where it was last we heard of it. So basically, it's subsection 2.7.1e to allow an accessory structure that's not compatible with the architectural character of the principal, to paragraph 2.7.2a2 to allow an accessory structure closer than 5 feet, paragraph 2.7.2a3 to allow an encroachment into the front yard setback, paragraph 2.7.2a4 to allow an accessory structure to be located within the front yard, and then subsections 2.7.10a to allow boat storage, and item 4.5.2c1d to allow front yard parking pad.
Okay, if the applicant will come forward for us. Are there any questions of staff before we move forward? Hearing none, okay. If you'll give your name and address for the record again, I'll swear you in, sir.
Alan Kobiski, 62 English Street.
Do you swear, okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, do you have any updates for us?
We contacted the company, and there's not much they can do as far as downsize or anything like that. So we let them know y'all wasn't too happy about it, and they said they're going to come get it on the 28th. I hope I can trust that. It took them 3 months to put it up, but
So they're coming back to get it?
This month, they're going to come get it.
Okay. Are they going to give you any sort of refund or anything, or?
No, we did it, well, we did it under the rent to own thing. We
Okay.
was gonna outright pay it or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
But, like I said, we put $1,500 down, had to do something else, but we're gonna be out about $3,000, but to me, that's better than us having to pay the full $14,000 they was wanting for it by the end of the time and paid for it. So I'm just gonna chalk it up as a law.
I mean, that's terrible, but that's a blessing that you did not just pay for that. We're not trying to be hard on y'all or anything. It's just, we were having trouble getting that approved just under what we can do. That's just, it was so big.
I understand. I do partly blame myself for not looking into it further beforehand, but
You're not the first.
In the future, am I going to be allowed to put like a single one right there kind of in the middle?
If you ever want to we'd need a plan that could be something that would be something to be more likely to get approved due to all the circumstances. But it would have to be, it'd have to be a new plan to do that, and we'd see what we can do. So I couldn't guarantee anything like that or anything like, but that would have been much more palatable to a one-car thing in front. I think that you probably could maybe convince some people of that, but we don't know it until we hear it.
Like I said, as far as the parking and all that, she already had a parking pad in the front yard when she built the house. We just expanded it a little bit.
Yeah, and there's no, it may or may not, people may or may not like it. There's no rule against. Now, you aren't supposed to park in the front though, right, Mr. Ragsdale?
Yes.
But you can concrete a yard, it's just that.
Correct. So I would say that if the structure is gone, the first 4 variances that are listed in the request are no longer valid or no longer needed. The last 2 would be something if either the applicant could address. So one is the storage in the front yard of the boat, which I'm assuming you probably wouldn't do that. Maybe you could address that. And then you mentioned there was a front yard parking pad. We could see there was one, and we could see if it predates the UDC or, yeah. Right, but the expansion would still need a variance, or you would need to, I think, deal with those 2 issues, just the last 2 variances.
Okay, so for me to repeat to you, just so I understand, we need to figure out whether or not they still want the boat in the front yard at all.
Right.
And then if that original parking pad predated the UDC, which looks like it may have, just by the way the concrete looks and stuff,
right,
they would be able to park there. They just wouldn't, they supposedly can't park on the new concrete, but they can have concrete. You can concrete your whole yard if you want to.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, does that make sense, sir?
Yeah.
Are y'all wanting to still keep a boat in the front yard? Or are you going to find another place to keep that?
The only other place we had to put is under the carport.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but her van would have to be out in the yard where, she'd have to be getting in and out of the van, in the rain and stuff, and that's not good for her wheelchair.
Yeah.
I can't get anything in the back. There's a curb. There's a big concrete block, on the back or where the carport is, so I can't get nothing in the backyard.
Okay. And then, are you planning on only parking no matter what, we got the old parking pad and the new parking pad. Are y'all okay with just parking on the old parking pad, or you want to still park vehicles on the whole thing?
If there's any way possible, then I'd have to put all the cars out on the street.
Yeah.
I mean, part of the reason, like I said, this is Memphis. It's not a safe town, and my cameras will be close to where I can see my vehicles.
Yeah.
I mean, all of them got insurance except one. I just haven't got insurance on it yet. But every last one of them's got tags, and they're all operable. So I mean, they're all in use from time to time. We can't drive it just one at a time, but they are all in use.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions of the applicant?
So the new concrete is right adjacent to the old concrete, correct?
It's the whole. You can't see it there, but it's basically the entire yard. You can see it on the picture on the right, the way it's gone all the way to the sidewalk.
Yeah. So
This is what it was before.
That's what it was.
before, okay.
And then this is what it is now.
I see. So even when this structure comes down, I mean, we're not asking them to demo the concrete. We're just trusting that they're either going to not park on the portion that was old, and it's going to kind of be an honor system type deal that they're not going to park there.
That's correct. So if this were to be rejected in its totality, then they would be able to park in the existing front parking pad and under the thing, but I guess under the new concrete would be a no-go.
It would just be it would be based on code enforcement policing it is all you could do, because.
Would it come back? I mean, yeah, so if code enforcement cites them for anything, does that come back here for any reason, or?
I think that would go to environmental court.
That's correct.
Say one of
Yeah, you're still.
When I was living in Fraser, we you know, we parked on the yard without concrete, and code enforcement said, no, you can't do that. You have to have concrete. As long as you got concrete, you can park on the concrete.
Yeah.
We put concrete down, so I can park on it. I still have, my neighbors next door still park on the grass. And I mean, that's why we put concrete down, so I wouldn't be parking on the grass.
Yeah, there's what's allowed to be done, and then what people do. And those two things are not always the same, as you can see. I mean, how long has it been under code that you couldn't park in the front yard? Like as far as like a parking pad and like that kind of thing?
As far as I know, just since the UDC.
The UDC.
I don't know if there was any restriction before that.
I had to be, because like, I was in Fraser for 30 years. And
Before,
way
you
back
couldn't
then,
park in the grass in the front
complaining
yard,
about
and then
parking
after the
in front yard
UDC, you weren't allowed to park in the front. Is that right?
So
There were some changes in the UDC over the years, so we're in year 12, I guess, or 13.
Mm-hmm.
So there have been a few changes.
So from a logical standpoint, I mean, I think you wouldn't have put the concrete there, period, at first. But since it's down there, we're not going to ask them to remove it. So from just me personally, taking the structure down is more important than the fact that the cars are parked on that portion of it. Because if cars aren't parked there, I don't think the cars being there poses any additional safety or hardship than the unsightly concrete coming all the way to the edge of it. So I guess that's the cars parking there is not really the biggest issue. Not maybe the boat, but the cars themselves. I would be open to not having an issue with the cars on the new concrete.
The code, tell me if I understand something, but the code prohibits you from parking on the front yard, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
You have to park behind the front facade of the property.
But we're still going to allow that, even with the existing concrete. We're still going to allow cars to park on the front. So,
you probably don't want to say that we will allow it. It's just, if they do it, fine. But we will allow what the code would permit.
Well, you could grant the variance to allow that, and you could condition that to, have landscaping or something. I mean, those are some things you could do if you.
yeah, we can variance for that purpose. And I'm not opposed to that because we're not going to get past cars parking in the front of the house because they're going to park on the existing, even if they just park on the existing concrete, that's still on the front of the house, correct? So it's just a little more of a variance with the additional concrete.
The difference is two more car widths can be parked on, not just one up against the house. Now it's two more cars closer. But I do hear what you're saying, like.
And I'm just thinking
it's
about
already concrete.
Yeah, and what's the alternative? Now you're going to fill the alternative is what, filling the street with additional cars, which might be even more of a, I don't know.
That'd probably be more dangerous to the public too, because it would lessen the width of the street. Because you'd have cars parked out there.
But that's just my 2 cent thoughts on it.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, I'm going to ask again, is there any opposition to this case? Always have to ask. Okay. And then, so I think we need to go to discussion. So if we can get a motion to approve.
Well, let me ask one question.
Yeah.
I know there aren't opponents here. I think there were last time. And I wonder if they said anything about the cars being parked on the front yard or not, if that was an issue for them.
He said all about the carport.
I just don't remember. If we're talking.
When the code enforcement come up, it was about the carport, and all this other stuff was just added on later.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and the carport, I think we.
It was there. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I think we know what we're going to do with the carport, but not the question of allowing, of giving a variance to allow parking in the front yard. I just want to make sure that, the opponents, that we take into account what the opponents have said about, if they might not have said anything, but I just want to make sure that we think about and take into account what they said about that. Since we're going outside of the code to allow this?
Are we going outside of the code to allow this?
We
Have
haven't
we made
discussed
that?
it yet.
Oh, okay.
So I think what I'm trying to find I think what I'd like to do is see if we can get a motion to approve variances 4 and 5. Is that right? Or
Yes.
they're listed in the staff report?
Well, one of them is the boat, right? So are we looking to approve the boat as well?
Well, we're just getting it to talk about.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we're just getting it to talk about. So, is that the best way to say that? Are they listed in number? I'm trying to make sure I'm saying them right, Brett.
They're not listed as bullets, but it would be the variance from section 2.7.10A.
Okay.
From item 4.5.2C 1D.
Okay. And actually, I'm going to ask for a different motion. I'm going to say let's give 2 different motions on this. So let's first just talk about the boat. Okay, and then we'll move to the car. So I want a motion to approve the variance from section 2.7.10A.
So moved.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion on allowing the boat storage in the front yard?
I cannot do it.
What?
I cannot. I can't vote for the boat storage in the front yard. I get it. I know we have a lot of concrete and a lot of vehicles on this property, but I think that, there's a reason for that, and that to me kind of gives the opportunity. I know it's out there and it's surrounded by cars now, which is why they had the structure, but I think it's just going to give, if we start that now, whoever moves there will continue to park their boat there long after they're gone. I just don't want to start that on this particular property. I know they don't have a lot of room, but there is room on the other parts of the property for storage of that boat.
I agree. But in addition, this is also the same street where we have developers also trying to get other variances of different types. And we're setting up a conflict we're already telling them to have a consistent frontage. And then we allow this, which also if crime opportunity, a boat in the front does not help that or help their cause or their case. So I just agree that's
I'm
to just leave.
I'm torn on the boat
place.
because it's more permanent. Like the boat doesn't get out as often as a car does.
Boat's not leaving.
Boat's not leaving unless you're going, the occasional time you get it out. So that's more of a fixture that's going to be there.
Right.
The only reason I would have considered the boat was because he mentioned kind of the hardship of the alternate location the boat can go in is where you mentioned a van goes.
Carport.
Yes.
Right now, under the carport's where she gets in and out of her van. We'd have to take the van out of there. She'd be out in the rain, out in the front yard, and the boat would be up on, the only boat choice I had to push the boat up on the carport. Yeah.
So that was the only kind of piece that kind of triggered that. But I do agree with you all saying about the boat is a little harder to agree on.
Because, she has a ramp getting in the van. That's part of the reason why we wanted the awning over off the sides.
Hold on. Sorry. We're in discussion. I appreciate you saying something, but you can go ahead and have a seat, unless we have any other thing. But I do appreciate you. I have a problem with everything. I really do. And I feel really bad for the situation we're in and everything like that, but I might want a boat, but I don't have one. I don't have a place to keep a boat. There's just certain things you can't have when there's not a place to keep it.
Yeah.
And
Mr. Chairman, I agree with that position, and I think that the people who were down here in opposition last time, if they had known that they had to specifically say, we also don't agree with the boat and the additional, the one that's not, the part that's not grandfathered parking in the front yard, I think they would have articulated that. And then my mind goes another meeting or two before that when we had these young men down here getting ready to build new homes. And we said, no, you can't have a front-facing garage. And, they're building homes there now, according to the way we approved it. And so we wouldn't even allow them to have a front-facing garage. And so out of fairness to them, because they're going to want to sell those homes and everything, I can't vote for the boat. And the only thing I could say is I wouldn't tell them they have to remove the concrete, the extra concrete or anything. And it'd just be like somebody parking on the yard or something. It would be a code enforcement, maybe neighbor complaint type thing. And so I would leave it like that. That's how I would prefer to do it.
Okay, so is there any discussion just on the boat? Let's go ahead and vote on the boat, and then we'll go to the next one. If you'll give us a roll call, please, Brett.
Yes, sir. Ms. Baker?
No.
Ms. Bostic?
No.
Mr. Bruce?
No.
Mr. Campbell?
No.
Mr. Claybrook?
No.
Ms. Scurlock?
No.
Vice Chair Savage Towns?
No, I find that the standards of 9.22.6 of the UDC are not being met, and the property will be unduly detrimental to those in the vicinity.
Chair Rainey?
No. All right, so if we now can get a motion to approve a variance from item 4.5.2C 1D to allow front yard parking.
Oh, no, it's 2710. Oh, yeah, we just voted on 4.5.2C1D, didn't we?
No, that was the boat.
Oh, right, but I thought that's what you said. Okay, so.
We voted on the boat. Now we're getting a motion for the 4.5.2C1D to allow front yard parking pad.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, same section.
Just to clarify, is this vote for for front yard parking period, or is it for the additional front yard parking?
It would be for the additional, assuming, and we'll discuss it, but assuming that the other piece is grandfathered in.
Okay.
Then it would be just for the additional.
Okay.
Yeah. So
move.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. So I think we all somewhat think, although we don't have any proof of anything, that the older concrete directly in front of the house probably is grandfathered in for front yard parking. And the question for us, I don't think we have the right at all, because by right they can concrete anything they want. So we can't make them take it out. That's just allowed to do there. It's whether or not we want to go ahead and allow them a certain amount of parking on that or not. All of it, part of it, or just no. I think we all know that probably it'll get parked on because it's there. And there's not much we can do about it. Somebody can call code or something like that. But it's whether or not we want to approve any portion of that for additional parking. So any discussion on that?
I think that is an issue between them and their neighbors at that point. I think the parking pad should stay there. If the neighbors complain, and knowing your neighbors at that point, of knowing the reasons why they're using it, I think that's a neighbor issue. I don't want to put it with sale of the house in perpetuity. But leave the parking pad, and if the neighbors are okay with it and they're good with their neighbors, if not, Judge Dandridge would make a decision accordingly.
I tend to agree with that now. I mean, I wasn't privy to the previous conversations and meetings about what you all declined in the previous meetings, but like she said, no matter what we say, if they want to park on it, they're going to do that. But I wouldn't want to approve it because it'll set a precedent for the next neighbor to want to do it. So if the concrete can remain, I am fine with the grandfathered piece being what parking is allowed on, and just leaving it at that.
Any other comments?
I agree.
All right, if you'll give us a roll call vote, please, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Gerlach?
No.
Mr. Claybrook?
No.
Mr. Campbell?
No.
Bruce?
No?
Ms. Bostic?
No.
Ms. Baker?
No.
Vice Chair Savage Towns?
No. I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 are not being met and will be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
Chair Rainey?
No.
Motion fails.
All right, question for you, real quick before we move on. Because the structure itself is being removed, we don't need to even reject those other variances. We can just leave those.
You could sunset it if you want. That could be an option to give I think the date was mentioned, but I don't.
I mean, they're coming on Tuesday.
Right. So I think we can just continue our code enforcement on that one.
Okay.
And essentially that was rejected. Well, it wasn't, but it wasn't approved, so.
Yeah, okay. Just making sure we're okay to not approve, okay.
I believe Judge Dandridge could use the discussion in the hearing.
Okay.
That we just had to make any determinations if he needed to in the future, but hopefully we won't.
Very good. Okay, if you'll call our next case.
Yes, sir. It's item number 6, BOA 22-001. It's the property between Bass Road and Rast Road, east of New Bethel Road.
All right, is the applicant present? Like it. And is there any, I assume there's opposition to this case? All right, if the applicant will take a seat, opposition to, and then if the staff can give us a staff report. You're okay.
All right, yeah, sorry about that. So Seth Thomas again, this is application 2301 between Bass Road and Rast Road, east of New Bethel Road. It's a variance from paragraph 3.3.1 G2 to allow a single-family home to be built on a lot without the required 16 feet of road frontage. It's a 21.5 acre lot in the Conservation Agriculture District. It's about, maybe 4-ish miles south of the county line to the north, Millington adjacent. Here's an aerial of the lot in question. It is the area in highlighted in yellow. Here's the zoning map, so literally completely surrounded by other conservation agriculture zoning. Same with the land use, it's all single family or open space. Here's the site photo, so I did not go back into this prescriptive easement and take photos of the lot itself, but this is the view of the shared easement that serves as an entrance to the property from Rast Road. And this is a survey of the lot. So this particular easement serves, about 5 different lots, some of which have been built on, some of which have not. This particular lot, as it exists, is vacant right now. So really, in conclusion, they're seeking relief to allow a single-family home to be built on a lot without the required 16 feet of frontage. The property is accessed through an easement that's shared by 4 other properties, 2 of which are vacant and 2 have single-family residential homes. There is an easement, the easement that's shared between those properties is recorded under an instrument number, the document of which is located in the staff report. Staff feels that the granting of this variance will not cause a detriment to the public good or impair the intent or purpose of the Unified Development Code. And we are, it says rejection, that's how I copy pasted from the other thing. We're recommending approval. And the only condition we have is before a building permit is approved, the applicant must submit certification to a building official per paragraph 9.7.2B3. That aspect of the zoning code is really to more or less legalize a lot created by deed, which is kind of the situation we have here. Areas of land that are within a certain amount of acreage can be created by deed. They don't have to go through the formal subdivision process. And this is exactly how you kind of get oddly shaped lots within unincorporated Shelby County. And so really this variance will legalize the entrance to the lot and allow it to, have a principal structure placed on it.
How wide is the easement?
It's like 14.8.
Okay. So is the easement, is that considered the road frontage? We're really just or what we're doing is really just that this easement is 1.2 feet too small, or is it that they really should have had fee title?
So basically every single, and it's, I guess I could pull it up on the zoning atlas here if I can find the lot number. Every single lot that's located along this easement has a little bit of frontage along both Rast Road and Bass Road. Here's my zoning atlas.
Thank you.
Here we go. So as you can see, sort of all of these separate lines go and connect to a larger piece of land that's located off of here. So the easement itself, the prescriptive easement exists itself is very wide. However, that prescriptive easement in terms of the Unified Development Code doesn't exist in terms of giving frontage, right? So the amount of frontage that they do have along the road does not meet this requirement, even though the whole of this area is under a prescriptive easement that privately would grant them access, but in the public record standpoint, it doesn't meet our conservation agriculture requirements for lot width, which is the reason they're seeking the variance.
So on each of the, it's like a double poled flag lot. It hits both streets, right? So on each side, is it 14 feet, or is it like 7.4 on one street and 7.4 on the other?
I'd have to go back and look at the measurement exam. And of course, the survey didn't really show, it more included the prescriptive easement. But basically, they have a little bit less than 16 feet on both. I want to say from when I looked on the registers using the little measurement tool, it was like 14.7 on the north side and like 13.9 on the south side.
So they got close to 30 overall. They're just not in the same spot.
They're just not in the same spot, exactly right.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. Any other questions of staff? Okay, so we're going to get started again. All right, just to be sure, because it's been 5 minutes since we spoke, they do have fee access on both sides, but only the 14, and then everybody shares the easement that takes a bigger area, correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
So, yep.
great, just making sure. All right, are there any other questions of staff?
I had a question.
Yeah.
Almost forgot what it was. Who maintains this easement? It looks in the picture like it's well maintained, but whenever you have something on an easement like that.
That's going to be located within that easement document in terms of the maintenance and whatnot, since it's a private, and I think it's in the staff report. It might speak to it.
And I'm just.
The number was, can you give us the number again?
Yeah.
Oh, it probably is here. Sorry, I have it now.
Oh, wrong one.
Oh, no, I see it. It's in here. It's right there.
Yeah, it's FK 1868 is where it's recorded. Whoops.
I did not read that.
So most of it, non-exclusive, blah, blah, blah.
Did we lose it again?
Including the right to maintain, more particularly described.
And here I can pull it up in my staff report as well.
There,
Here we go.
to answer Mary's question, I don't see everyone has the right to maintain it. No one has the obligation to there's no obligation. There's just, granted was the right to maintain.
Okay, one more kind of follow-up. There's one person can't block off part of it or anything, can they?
That's, at least under this, that would be correct, yes. Since it's everybody who's got a piece of land off of this easement has to grant access to everybody else who's got land off the easement.
By this easement, and no one would have the right to block it? Okay.
So and you may not know this, it looks like a guy gave easement to all his kids, and that's how, when it was subdivided, everybody got a little piece to build on back in whatever year that was. And then property's been sold since.
Yep, and this is very common. We see this a lot in unincorporated Shelby County. You got 150 acres, and slowly but surely it gets siphoned off by deed, which is legal within the acreage that this lot exists in.
Okay. All right, any other questions of staff? All right, if the applicant will come forward and give your name and address for the record.
Kyle Ham, Wilbanks Architecture and Associates, 5567 Commander Drive, Arlington, Tennessee.
All right, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, do you have anything to add to the staff report?
No, I think Mr. Thomas explained everything that the applicant is kind of seeking to do, seeking approval for a single family, to build a single family home on a non-conforming current lot. But like Mr. Thomas mentioned, the access easement allows, gives him access to the property, just not, he doesn't have the conforming road frontage amount.
Okay. All right, well, you'll reserve a bunch of time, like 11 minutes if you needed to rebut. So does anybody have any questions? Sorry.
Do you know who actually maintains the easement? Because it looks like it's well maintained from the photos.
I believe it's probably the gentleman behind me in the opposition, but I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right, if the opposition will come forward, and if y'all have I have two people, whoever wants to talk first can talk first. You'll give your name?
McHale, 3125, 3171, Rast Road.
Okay, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead and share with us, sir.
To answer your question, I've maintained the driveway. I've been maintaining it since 1992, every day. Cutting grass, grading gravel, buying gravel. No help from nobody else. The deed you just read, 2 of the 4 on there are still alive. The other 2 are dead. One of them's son sitting here. We put them 15-foot strips in there for this reason. When we cut them 15-foot strips, we done it so there wouldn't be building permits because it's not allowed by Shelby County Code. So if we're going to change this variance to allow somebody to build with less than 16 foot, or we change it for the whole Shelby County, or we just change it for this particular lot?
A variance, I mean, like by definition, only changes it for the property in question.
Right, but that's,
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm asking. Why are we bending the rules for this one? It's intended farmland.
Could I,
Then, this guy knew this, buying this property, that it was intended farmland before he ever closed on it. You know, Mr. Blanket said, this is farmland, I would think about what you're doing before it's bought.
well, to my understanding, are there other houses that are accessible via
Correct.
that road?
Before the easement was cut up like that. We had 60-foot of road frontage at that time.
But the road is reduced even for those homes.
The reduce is, no, actually, the 15-foot in question for Clink is cutting through one of my pieces of property. So it's landlocked me. Okay, yeah, he's on the map there. You see the right-hand side there, where it comes across this 4-acre parcel. The second lot up here.
This one?
Right there, yes, that's one of mine. That 15-foot comes right across the yard there, just blocks me from the road completely. And then I own on the opposite side of the driveway as well, yes, up through there. And then a 15-foot strip going down the left-hand side to the road.
Can you give your full name for me?
Scott Edward McHale.
So how did, I guess I'm looking at the easement from 95, it looks like. Which one are you?
In 95, it'd be Robert, my dad.
Okay, that's all I was trying to figure out. Thanks.
My dad built a house at 3125. I recently purchased it. I had the other one. You know, he moved off about 10 years ago, and, you know, here I've been.
So you're the one on the street, right?
I'm not right here.
You're that one, and then
That one and the next one in. That one.
And what's the subject property that we're talking about?
Subject property is this one.
The long strip, okay.
what about so the property to the left or right down on Bass Road, is that part of the family property too?
Yes, it was.
That one. Is there a house, is there a house there?
There are.
Yeah, if you'll zoom in tight, there's a house on both sides of the driveway there.
Gotcha, okay. So why would y'all do it by this, why did y'all try to rely on the 15 feet as opposed to just putting a deed restriction that just didn't allow property it to be built if you just wanted it to be land?
When he done it, my granddad had done all that. When he done it, it was 60 wide. And then he got looking at that and said, I've got to get the easement out of it and get the 15-foot strips cut to the road so you would have road frontage. And then, like I say, then I ended up losing 0.25 acres, whatever, when it went to Rast Road. That side of the property goes, north side of the property, east side rather, goes from Bass to Rast. My property on the left side here goes to Bass. Another piece of property goes all the way to Bass Road. So there's two pieces of property in there, or one piece that don't go to the road.
Yeah,
Right there, the one you're on, which belongs to the gentleman behind me.
I got a question real quick, Mr. Secretary. Is there a problem with having a landlocked piece of property other than not being able to get a building permit as long as you have access?
I don't believe so.
I don't think there's any issue, if you have an access easement, then yeah, you just don't have the requirements to get a building permit.
Right.
So the intent of this parcel was farmland.
That's what it was intended for. And to bring you up to speed, this easement's in the middle. I got tax bills, November, just like everybody else did in Shelby County. I didn't get one. I didn't get the one for James B. McHale, the estate of. Couldn't figure out why. Made some phone calls, figured out why. Mr. Clink had deeded it in his name. We spoke on the phone, said, hey, can you get this straightened out, man? Do the right thing. He said, I bought it. I bought it, I own it, I'm keeping it.
Who'd he buy it from?
Nobody. Somebody made a mistake at the assessor's office and deeded it based on Oh, help me out. Based on the right-of-way. He was granted access to the right-of-way, and it mentions that in the deed. You can look his deed up, and it mentioned 2 different parcel numbers. Buying one parcel number, access to another, granted access to the other. And he went down and deeded it over into his name. I had to hire attorneys, go down to the tax assessor's office, on the station, and get all this stuff fixed. Now I've got it back in James B. McKell coming to me.
This is a little confusing.
I don't understand.
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand. So
You pull that deed up there.
so you all had homes on it originally towards the back parcels had homes. And after the fact, I mean, did you reduce it after it was already established to avoid future development on the?
Well, no, it was basically reduced because he knew he was fixing to die. So let's get rid of the right-of-way, add them pieces to the parcels so they would go to the road. And then when he did, it reduced everything to 15 foot. He kept a 30-foot strip in the middle. That's how it ended up at 15 and 15. This is parcel number 385. It's talking about rolling down and mentioned both parcels, like 482, if I'm right.
Linda McKell.
Martin, she was my uncle's widowed wife.
Okay, so she owned the property and she's the one that deeded the farmland.
Correct.
Okay. I can't tell what the heck's going on.
I can't either. I don't understand it.
Cloudy.
You know,
It's confusing.
I need a survey I can read, I think, to be able to tell what's going on. Part of me is like, if you want to keep a property from being used for something like that, put a restriction on it. You don't just chop up these little things that are almost exactly what you need, but short.
Right.
So, not to speak ill of the dead, I know your grandfather didn't, he didn't do it right. In general, we want property to be able to be used for its highest and best use. And allowing this easement allows that to be done, or allowing this variance. I don't see, there's nothing really of record. I don't understand the whole deed that you're talking about, that's what I don't get the most.
Scroll down the bottom of the deed if you would.
The bottom of it?
Right here. Go a little more.
Oh, look, more or you want less?
Right there. Parcel number 482 and 385. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So here, let me, so we got 4, let's see, nope.
It really, it took me a while to get my head wrapped around all of it. But
Yeah, I can see that.
particular deed you just read is the one that she sold. And she sold 19.66 acres.
Oh, yeah, you're right, yeah.
21.05.
It's these, 482 and 485 are on the same piece of land at least.
Right.
So they were taxing you separately for the easement?
Oh, yeah. I get 4 tax bills.
Here's just the straight line.
But I guess my question for you, let's not talk about the easement at all right now.
Yeah.
Their piece of property, does it touch the road on both sides or does it not?
This piece of property?
Yeah, the piece of property in question with the farmland property.
Touches both sides. Touches Bass and Rast, like I said, right at 15 foot on both sides.
So the property does go all the way to Bass, or is there a property in?
It looks like it doesn't to
It looks
me.
like there's a property that is right. If you
Now,
go,
if you'll zoom in, see, you get the flagpole, like he said earlier, double flagpole, which is also not allowed in Shelby County. If you come down that one side there, it gets into the 19.66 acres after it passes me, widens out, and it goes back in.
Goes back, yep, it's a, double flag.
oh, okay. It's those. So that little strip is what that little strip is what.
And there's a strip dead center in the middle, which I think is.
The dead center of the middle strip is the driveway.
How wide is that little strip?
Yeah.
That was 15
The
feet.
strip, without a.
Yeah, can you scroll down real slow while you're looking at that one where we can see it lit up?
Kind of hard to say it.
So that little strip that goes to the road is part of the larger parcel on both ends. And that's how you get, that's,
It's stripped down the middle, it's just road to road. So when you seen the pictures of the driveway, she was asking who maintains up that drive, that's it. It's right up the middle of it.
And this is what you said was conveyed in that deed. The little strip really is what we're talking about.
Correct. Somehow it got conveyed into that deed, and when they bought it.
82 and 58. So 85 is the double fronted flag. 85 is the double fronted flag lot, and then 82 is that strip that's going to run from Rast to Bass.
And who is it showing now owns the 82?
As
Is
far
that
as
Mr. McKell?
the register of deeds is concerned, let me see.
Which I don't always trust. I do real estate work. I don't trust registered deeds all the time. Like things get misdone and stuff like that. I will say this is a confusing one though.
This is James B. McKell, the estate of. It's the current owner listed on the registrar's website. Of course, they make mistakes all the time. So
yeah. But the question I think before me is, I mean, there's an easement we think is valid. I don't know where it goes. If that is valid, then they have ingress egress. That might be a separate court case on whether or not that easement from 1995 is valid. If it is, it ran with the land. It said it went to then that's that. Who owns the underlying fee doesn't really matter to us. Not that it doesn't matter.
Correct.
The question for us is just whether or not we think there should be a variance to allow this house to be built on based on it having 14.8 foot of frontage, really almost 30 if you add them together of road, but they are different roads, and whether or not we think you could get, that's our question.
that's correct.
Yeah, okay.
And that 14.8 is within the easement. It's not off to the side of the easement, it's within the easement.
Doesn't even have to be.
It's its own thing.
But if he gets a permit just based on that 14.8, will he be allowed to use the easement, or can this gentleman fence it off?
That's something that I'm not a property attorney, so I would have to go into the actual law, within the easement in terms of if it's a shared thing by everybody, because the road that runs down the middle is its own separate parcel, which is now in ownership of the estate of the person who passed. The lot that we have in question has connection both ways, but the idea would be, if this variance were to be granted, that it would use the existing curb cut, gravel road that is within the ownership of the estate of Mr. McKell.
and what's the required width? The required is 15?
16.
The required is 16 feet.
And we're at 14.8?
14, 15, it's, the survey, like Chairman Rainey said, it's very difficult to read, but it's very close to the required amount to allow a flag lot within the Conservation Agriculture zoning district.
Okay, let me ask you another question. Let's say I have a lot, this is not this lot, and it's got a big ditch all along the road. So got to build a bridge to get to the road. But if I had a neighbor that got me to a different road, so I had vehicular access that way, that road frontage, even though it's a ditch, is still good road frontage for me to have a buildable lot.
That's
like
correct.
my easement does not have to, it does not have to go only over my property, because if it did, I would need an easement.
That's correct.
I own it. Okay.
To me, it seems like if we approve this, and I could be totally wrong, that we would be approving it, but he really wouldn't necessarily have vehicular access to the property, because he may or may not be able to use that easement. He could build another drive down the 14.8.
That's correct. He would be able to build
That's
another
how I would
drive,
see it.
because that, we'd be granting him for less than 16 feet. He could open up a curb cut on either Bass or Rast Road and gain access, staying within that exact 15 feet that would be, through.
He would
this
have to
granting
stay
of
on
variance.
his own little stick of property that comes down to the.
If it's determined by someone else that easement isn't valid.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It seems like we should know before we approved it whether we are approving a home to be built on a tract that you can't get to. There's no vehicular access. I guess we could require vehicular access. That would be how I would think we'd have to do it.
But there is vehicular access,
Well,
right? No.
it'd be using the easement that this 14.8 is not necessarily a part of it.
She's saying
I may be misunderstanding this.
It says easement, it's 30 foot wide. You have 15 foot here and 15 foot here. You don't have to use mine. You can come up here 15 foot.
Exactly,
But
but
if you
there's
can use it-
nothing
but there's
built
nothing
there
stopping
right
you
now.
But yeah.
Yeah,
But if you want, like to your point, if you wanted to build a 15-foot drive,
all the way
All
to
the way
his
to it,
property,
he
yeah.
could.
So my thought is if we were going to approve this, we ought to make it clear that he either has to do that or gain access to the easement, one or the other.
I don't think so.
And in that case, then who helps maintain it? Who puts that in place?
It's a really crappy easement.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I would never draft an easement like that. It should have said who was gonna, it is what it is. It should have said who was gonna maintain it. I think that probably you could, go to court and force something or just get an agreement, hey, we're gonna maintain this together. Here's the cost, here's what we're gonna do. I still think the question for us is whether or not we think 14.8 should be varied from the 16. Whether or not he can get, we're not given the building permit.
Yeah.
This is the leap for that. I mean, to find out the rest, that's like a court case.
If we approve it, I don't know how they could deny him a permit.
Yeah. and if
Unless
you-
we put something on
and if
there
he
that,
starts building and the court finds out he can't use that driveway, he's in deep poo.
And what would prevent him from being able to use that driveway? I guess ultimately, what would be
I don't know
the factor that would?
I'm not a court. I don't know if there is anything that prevents him if that easement is good over that. He's allowed ingress and egress over that.
and that easement includes his property. It's an easement that, for the benefit of his property as well as the others. Is that what you're saying?
For this, I'm assuming it is based on this, but that I don't think is my job to figure out for sure. I think it's his job to do some due diligence to make sure before he starts investing in this.
So to be clear, the individual who owns that large chunk of parcel that he's trying to build a house on also owns that 14.8.
That 14.8 is 2 flagpoles coming to that large parcel.
Yeah.
I thought we just said that somebody else on the
No.
estate.
It's the same individual, right?
No, only that, so you had the 3 little poles up there?
You see how
The estate owns the middle one, and that happens to be where the driveway is.
I see, that's okay.
And, yeah, and it's not well defined on, like you're saying, Mary,
It's
who
horribly
can use
defined.
what, but it's for the benefit of all of them to use that, and somebody's already put gravel down.
I see.
So I don't know if you could keep somebody off of there.
But that strip is part of the big.
3071 house, I had to deed that whole farm to me. I had to go down here with attorneys, draw new papers, surveyors, and deed 100 acres to me, to go down there and get a building permit, and then come back and redeed to get it back in my granddaddy's name. Same thing when we did the house at 3125. So 92 and 97, I spent a ton of money trying to figure this out to get the permits.
Well, can I ask this basic question? Is there any particular reason that you would like to prohibit, I guess, a residential home on that lot?
Well, like I say, it turns into this driveway that I've been maintaining by myself since 1992. You know, I don't know if anybody's bought a load of gravel lately, it's $900 a load. I put 2 loads on it since January. You know,
But I'm assuming that driveway would still be there, right? I mean,
It's not going to go
there's
away.
a road that goes all the way through the place. There's
Yeah,
a
it
road,
goes-
a gravel road that goes from one road to the other. You know, starts all the way across the property. It's mowed, maintained. You know, he mows one end of it, I take the other end of the gravel end. Yeah, you're looking at it there.
Have you spoken to the new owner about possibly amending the easement or doing anything to factor in the maintenance?
Well, we've talked with the realtor before, they said, silver cord, take the silver cord, take the silver cord. You know, this been trying to been involved over 15 times.
Yeah.
Since 04. And the last 3 just shot it back. Said, no, well, look, we can't get building permits, we're done. You know, but when Mr. Clink tried to buy, I went and talked to him and said, look, you know you're buying farmland. Show Some counties not gonna give you a permit unless you have it extra. And I got it, now you're right. Go ahead. Go ahead, that's what I'll do.
But would he help you maintain the easement?
Well, if he would've, would've.
Okay. I just feel like if there was some,
I've got some emails from it, but they said they would buy the driveway from me and me pay them. I wouldn't say something already on,
right.
you know? It, oh, sorry, I was talking too loud.
Again, what prevents the new owner to create his own drive
Nothing at all.
all the way from both streets?
Nothing at all.
And
He has
completely-
15 foot on the left there. He could go right up through there and make his own drive.
Yes, but so my question is whether we should approve this, or if we approve this, that we ought to say in the approval that he either does that or he enters into an agreement with
That's
this
what-
gentleman to share the maintenance.
No, we
5 years
can't.
down the road, I give a piece of this land to my kids, or we're gonna get a building permit. Or am I gonna have to do this?
We can't force it.
That's for the courts to figure out, not for us.
So
But we can-
so
yeah,
we're
we're
asked
not-
to just approve or disapprove
Whether or not the 14.8
14.8
is good
can
enough
be a-
to be 16 based on being a big piece of property that can't be developed unless we do that.
Even though there may be no vehicular access available to the property. That's what I keep sticking on.
I'm still, just walk me through, I'm still trying to
Yeah, I mean,
understand.
it's-
So your concern is, because there is an owner of that lot now anyway.
Correct.
And they could build, whether
come-
there's a
come
house
visit
there or
if you want
not, they could build a driveway there now anyway. What does
It
allowing
wouldn't
the
be an
house to be
everyday
built,
use.
how does that affect you?
It's not an everyday use coming in and out of there. You know, it wouldn't be the big trucks, the concrete trucks, the dump trucks, power trucks, every day in and out.
So your
of the
biggest
road.
concern is maintenance of the gravel road that you basically maintain,
That's right,
and there's nobody else sharing that burden of that road but you right now.
that's correct.
I see.
So the only way that would make sense is they have their own road, which doesn't make sense logically to build two roads side by side, but that's the legal way for them to do it, which still limits them to 14.8, which will still be less than the 16 that's required.
Right.
Back to your point. So
like
I
I
guess
said-
my question is, the difference between 16 and 14.8 as far as the requirement, what dictates, I know it's the code, but what dictates that 16-foot number that you couldn't do with 14?
Residential driveway is really how it is. So, because, in unincorporated Shelby County, there are a bunch of flag lots. And so we just have to make it so you've got the width that any other driveway, whether you're incorporated or unincorporated, would have in terms of flagging something out.
Yeah.
And like I said, again, I've got 20 acres in there. He has 20 in there. We give it to our kids later. Are they gonna be permits? Based on 14.8 foot.
I mean, but really, it's a convenience factor. Like I wouldn't want anything too narrow just for the sake that, you need a certain width just if you're doing double parking or you're traveling in both directions. But
Well, like I say, my house, half mile in there.
Yeah.
If you've seen that, I'm way in there, so it ain't a parking factor. You ain't passing nobody.
yeah, you're not going to pass anybody on it. So I think that's the biggest question with the length of that street, reducing it. Does that cause any issues with potential cars coming in opposite directions? Which I guess it'd be right beside the gravel street, but to your point, they can't technically drive on that. So it's kind of a weird. I don't know.
Is it true that they can't technically drive on it?
I don't know. I've got it in lawyer's hands right now.
Okay.
Because it's, like he just said, it's confusing. And there's lawyers looking at it going, I don't know what's going on. Everything's stacked and clouded. And
Yeah, this is not my legal opinion, but, because I'm not your attorney, but I think they can. I think what they,
It seems like
what
it'd
they
be
messed
full.
up on is they should have,
Well,
how are we going to maintain it?
That was his
that's-
original thought, was
Yeah.
yes. But then looking at the 15-foot strips, he said, you granted them access by giving 15-foot strips.
I think they might have done that, not really understanding that didn't prevent that easement from being an easement. So I wonder if it's one of those things that I feel like you almost need a legal opinion about the easement before you can make a decision about the because the 14.8 with the easement is wide enough to do what you want to do. But until we know what the easement really allows, our opinion would be kind of partial.
I don't think the chairman agrees with
No, I think we got a couple options. This is what I'd say: hold it and have them see if they can work something out. And if they don't, we're at the same decision we're making now, or just say, his problem. It's not my problem. If he can't use that easement, I don't care. I'm only trying to decide whether or not I think 14.8 is close enough to 16 that if that's what he's left with, he could make something happen. And so but I'll do either one of those.
Both are, I think both of them are. My only thing, I feel like if this was in the legal, did you say this is already being looked at legally?
Well, I've handed all these deeds and all this stuff to lawyers that here figure it out.
Yeah.
What I can and can't do.
But we don't know how long this.
If you can figure it out. I mean, it's.
Well.
Let's. I think we need to come to discussion in a minute, if that's okay. Do you have anything else you need to add? And then we've asked some questions. We have some time. Do you want to speak as well? You're good. Okay. All right. Then you have some rebuttal time if you have anything to rebut. I know you work for the architect firm. Do you have anything you want to say?
Yes. I think this is just, we're kind of seeking approval, like you said, for him to have or be able to build a residential driveway on the 14.8 with, like you mentioned, he can either build his own driveway or come to an agreement with these gentlemen to use that access and share that access easement. There already is one in place that I believe gives him access to that property. But I think the variance that we're seeking right now is just to be able to give him permission and to be able to build a driveway on 14.8 rather than 16. Now, whether that come to that agreement to share that easement or he builds his own, one or the other, he would be okay with building his own driveway.
So question, you would not object if we put a provision in our approval that he would either have to do one or the other?
No, ma'am.
I mean, I think a 14.8, if anything, it'll be a detriment to the owner himself versus a public nuisance or a public issue. So you see what I'm saying? Like if he wants to get by with a 14.8 and we allow that, I mean, it's not going to affect us as much as it's going to affect him if he never gets access to that additional.
Right. He's under the understanding that if he is granted permission to build on the 14.8, it's going to be a smaller than typical driveway, which only, like you said, only really is a detriment to himself rather than anybody else.
Himself and future owners of the property who aren't here to. Because I guess that'll play itself out when they buy the property.
I was going to say a future owner is going to know he's got 14.8.
He's going to know it again, and that'll affect the value of the property.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. So let's discuss. We'll start with just a motion to approve BOA 23.01 as conditioned by staff.
So moved.
Okay, I imagine there's some discussion. Can we start with you, Ms. Baker?
Yes,
on
we can.
What was so?
Okay,
what would you
here's,
like your
here's the
condition
way. Here's the way I look at this. These properties were sold outside of the subdivision process.
Sure.
And whenever you do that, you are not guaranteed the ability to get a building permit for that property. I would even go so far as I'm not even sure it's really legal to do that, even though I know people do it all the time. But maybe it is. But since that happened, and you have properties that you have the one or some properties that have access by the easement, and then you have this property that he's trying to get a permit for that doesn't, we don't know whether it has access to the easement, but he does have 14.8, which isn't far from 16, and it doesn't seem to be a big deal, except to me, if we're going to approve, we're going to say it's okay that you went outside of the subdivision process to do that, and we're saying, okay, then you can get a permit. To me, as part of that, we should put some language on there that makes it known, and you brought up future owners, that's important, that if you're going to build on this property, you got to do one thing or the other so that you have access to it. So that's how I see it.
One thing or the other, meaning get access to the
You either get access to the easement, you enter into an agreement with this gentleman, and that way you can share the maintenance and everything, and that would be the best solution, really. But if he can't do that, if there's refusal to allow that, then he would just have to build his own drive down the 14.8. So.
How about we add a third option? So either build your drive on the 14.8, enter into an agreement on the driveway maintenance, or have a court of competent jurisdiction give a ruling on that easement.
Yeah.
If they can't, it could be that they can't come to an agreement, but the court says, well, this is exactly how we do in these situations. And I think that should be allowed as well. But the easy way, I think that's just adding that third option that is out of our hands, but it's still putting that where he knows what he's got to get done.
He's going to have 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm good.
And ultimately, we're just agreeing on the 14.8 if we think that's allowable to use, if that's all he has, regardless of the rest of it.
Yeah.
And making a contingent upon him doing one of those three things.
Well, I don't know I think it's, we're just going to approve. Those are the three options we can go with. As far as our approval is concerned, is really based on.
Our approval is that it's a buildable lot.
Yeah.
Based on that 14.8 of
exactly.
road frontage. And our conditions are the ones that are in staff, of course, as well as him either determining, one, building his driveway on one of the 14.8 poles, for lack of a better term. Two, coming to an agreement as to maintenance of the existing driveway. Or three, a ruling of by a court of competent jurisdiction as to his use of that existing driveway and easement.
Because if I'm correct, he doesn't, even if he built his own driveway, his own driveway doesn't have to extend to both streets. It can just go from Bass to the property.
His house.
Whatever the shortest distance is to the property, right?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, so.
Yeah, ma'am.
Question on the option, the three-prong option. Are we saying that's a choice for him, or are we choosing that as a condition for him?
Well, because he has the choice, he can always just build his driveway. Just move on like his representative says. Is he wants to be part of that other driveway, he'll either have to come to an agreement with the other owners of that easement or have a court determine what he can do with that easement and how they operate.
Okay.
But that's beyond those are beyond our reach, I guess. Or,
Well, those are the
conditions.
Those
but,
are the conditions.
Okay, yeah.
He could do any of those three.
Yeah, and he has full ability to just build a driveway right off the bat if he doesn't want to go the other direction.
Doesn't want to get entangled with all
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I like that.
It could be that everybody's reasonable and they figure out how much the driveway costs a year and split it up, and everybody gets a really nice looking driveway because it does look really good.
It sure does.
So, any other comments? Okay, so we're voting on condition by staff with that friendly amendment of the condition 3. Is that okay with the people that moved and seconded? Yes. Okay, Mr. Rags, will you give us a roll call, please?
Mr. Claybrook?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Bostic?
Yes.
Ms. Scurlock,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage Towns.
Yes, I find that the standards of the UDC of 9.22.6 are being met and will not be unduly detrimental to the properties in the vicinity.
And Chair Rainey.
Yes. All right, it's been approved. Thank y'all for coming down.
I didn't understand it until like 30 minutes in.
And with that, any announcements?
No, sir.
No announcement. This meeting is hereby adjourned.